Hi everyone, good morning. I hope you are able to hear me. Can anyone please confirm?
Yes, Bhaskar.
Perfect. Yeah. So in the last session, we talked about storages. I mean to say, till last session, we have come across the different storages. So how we can store the data with the storage services that we came across. That is ADLS Gen 2 that we have seen, and we have seen a SQL Server also, Azure SQL Server, how we can set up and how we can access the storages that we came across with the different client services. Even if we go for ADLS Gen 2, we came across Azure Data Storage Explorer. And for SQL Server, we have come across SSMS, SQL Server Management Studio. And if I wanted to store the data by using process, I wanted to store by using process only, or I wanted to read the data from there with the process. The process, if you wanted to do the process in data engineering, when it comes to the Azure data engineering, we are going to use Azure Data Factory and Azure Databricks. These two services we are going to use to process the data. We are not going to store, or we are not going to upload the data into the storage manually. Everything has to be done by process. So once you automate it, 100% has to be done by process only. If there is something that you require to do some testing, there are chances to upload the data manually. And we're also going to feed the data into the SQL Server. So what kind of data we are going to feed manually, we'll see that. But 99% is we are going to do by using process only. So that you just keep in mind. As I said, very starting, by Azure Data Engineering, or what we are going to do with the Azure Data Engineering is two works we're going to do it. Okay, so two primary roles we are going to do. One is data ingestion, and other is data transformation. These two operations only we are going to do in our entire journey. In our entire journey, you are going to do data ingestion and data transformation. So I'm talking about specific to Azure Data Factory here. This diagram says this diagram says your Azure Data Factory processing of your data. So data processing is going to be happen in two operations. One is data ingestion and other is data transformation. So why we need to go for data ingestion first and why we are going for data transformation in the next. So that I'll talk about it. So when you combine these three things, these two things, that we can call it as a ELT processing. If you remember in the starting of our demo, we talked about what do you mean by ETL processing: extraction, transformation, and loading. So that is the ETL processing we discussed about it. And ELT processing means extraction and loading. We're extracting the data from the sources and we're loading the data. And then in the second stage, you're applying the transformation. Because of that reason, we can say your Azure Data Factory is a ELT processing. It supports ELT processing. After loading, we are doing a transformation. After loading, we're doing a transformation. And just imagine for your data factory, there may be any kind of source. There may be any kind of source. So that means you may read the data from the database, or you may read the data from file systems, or you may read the data from other cloud platforms also. You may read data from other cloud platforms also. So databases, the database may be anything. The database may be anything. So database, when I say, that may be Oracle, or that may be SQL Server, or that may be MySQL, any database, even Snowflake, SAP HANA. So like this, you may have a varieties of the databases. And for all these databases, to connect all these databases, Microsoft or Azure provided user interface connectivity. You don't need to write a code to connect it. So it's a UI connectivity is provided. by using Azure Data Factory. Because of that reason, people are much more interested to use this Azure Data Factory for data ingestion. Okay, so for data ingestion, this is very, very important because this is having more number of connectors. More number of connectors we are having when you go for the Azure Data Factory. But if you go for others, they're not having that many connectors. So because of that reason, Azure Data Factory is much more important for data ingestion. So in my entire experience, I used Azure Data Factory for data ingestion. And we can also take the data from the file systems. That file may be in the cloud, that file may be on-prem, or that file may be SFTP server. The file also can keep the files in the real time. Basically, we don't access the files from the local systems. We are going to access, or we are going to read the data from the SFTP location. So in my case, I use this SFTP. And other cloud platform, from other cloud platforms also, we have a GCP and we have a AWS. So other cloud platforms also you can use to read the data, or even you can also use Azure to read the data. Because I told you, your Azure SQL Server will be used for even OLTP system also. If you're having a data in this kind of systems, then you can also take it from the Microsoft Azure. So that is what I'm saying. Your data sources may be anything. Your data source may be on-prem systems, or your data source may be cloud systems. Whatever it is, if we have a connectivity, if you have a connector to connect to those kind of systems with Azure Data Factory, then you can read the data from there. So that is what I'm saying. The process of taking data from this kind of systems or any systems, we can call it as a extraction. We're extracting the data. To extract it, we don't need to write a code. But SQL is required in some cases. What cases we require SQL, we'll talk about it. So do not say, I don't say 100% is coding is not required. But as per the Microsoft documentation, the Azure Data Factory is a code-free ELT tool. But still there is a SQL code is required in some cases. What cases they are, we'll talk about it. So when we come across practically, then you can understand how we can do or how we can write a SQL code. And SQL is 100% is required. We cannot avoid it. 100% is SQL is required. And in order to extract it, we are using Azure Data Factory. Once you extract it, you have to load the data into the target. Our target is 100% is if you are going to work as a Azure data engineer. I say 99% is, in my case, 100% is, in my experience, I'm saying, I used Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2 as a target. We talked about this Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2. Okay, so this is specifically designed for big data processing. This is specifically designed for accelerating your big data processing. So because of that reason, we are going to use Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2. So data is going to be divided into multiple blocks, and blocks will be distributed across the different nodes if we use Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2. But if we take these systems, except this cloud, the data is not going to be distributed. Data is going to sit in a monolithic systems, or the data is going to sit in a single systems. But when it comes to here, data is going to be distributed. So because of that reason, we are doing a transformation in the second phase. We are not doing the transformation here because it will not support for parallel processing. Parallel processing is there here, but parallel reading also is required. If you wanted to do parallel processing, then first we have to read parallelly. So parallel reading is not possible if your data sources is this. So because of that reason, we are taking the data transformations in the second phase. So that improves the performance. So the second stage also, I can use the Azure Data Factory in order to extract the data from Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2. So the process of taking data from Azure Data Lake Storage N2, I can call this as a extraction again. So here we're extracting for data ingesting, and again second time you're extracting for data transformation. This is the second phase you're going to have it. So same Azure Data Factory, this time I'm going to apply transformation. I'm going to apply transformation. This transformation also, we don't need to write a code. It is 100% is user interface. No need to write a code here. And once you applied appropriate transformation, then we are going to load the data into, again, Azure Data Lake Storage N2. Your target mostly is going to be Azure Data Lake Storage N2. You're going to load it. So when you combine these three, extraction, transformation, and loading, that we can say it is a ETL processing. But when you combine these two, we can say it is a ELT processing. So Azure Data Factory is a ELT tool. Azure Data Factory is a ELT tool.
Hi, Bhaskar.
Yeah, any question?
Yeah, so here always we use Azure Data Factory only for data ingestion and data transformation, or we can use Data Factory, Databricks also.
Yeah, actually, this diagram, I'm just talking specific to Azure Data Factory, so I'm just keeping this Azure Data Factory here. But in this particular place, you can also keep Azure Databricks. But basically, market is using Azure Databricks. 95% is with Azure Databricks. Okay, so in my experience, I did not come across with ADF to do the data transformation. In my experience, I used 100% Azure Databricks only. So that is very, very important. So here, since I'm talking about Azure Data Factory, I'm just giving this Azure Data Factory alone, but you'll be having Azure Databricks also. But for data ingestion, we don't use Azure Databricks because Azure Databricks is not having many connectors. So very limited connectors we're having with Azure Databricks. And that is that will be used for more for data transformation, not for data ingestion. So for data ingestion, you can use ADF, or you can use Scoop, or you can use Glue. There are many ETL tools, maybe I mean to say data ingestion tools people used to go. But when it comes to Azure, we're always going to use Azure Data Factory for data ingestion, and for data transformation, we're going to use Azure Databricks.
Yeah,
Okay.
thanks. Yeah, so in this case, like it can be streaming data or only for the batch
Only
processing?
batch. Data Azure Data Factory supports only batch processing.
Okay, so for the streaming and all, we need to go for the other.
Yeah, from Microsoft, they're having other streaming services like IoT Hub or something like that. We have it.
Oh, the Spark or Spark.
Yeah.
Okay.
But Data Factory supports only streaming data. Sorry, batch processing.
Yeah. Okay.
Bhaskar, one question.
Yeah.
We are not going to use like Databricks for the data ingestion, right? That is.
Yes, for data ingestion, we don't use Databricks.
Okay. To maintain some pattern, right? Only
Yes.
for the.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks. Yes, you are go ahead.
Yeah. Other person.
Yeah, Bhaskar. So my question is like, so in the ADF, in order to connect the like different sources like database, multiple document. So let's say if I connected with the database and multiple document, so I mean basically we are getting the different data from the sources, right? So in that case, like I mean, what basis we are extracting the data? Let's say I have bulk data which is existing in the table format, and the same thing I have some bulk files which are existing in the multiple document. So if that is the case, like what basis we are extracting the data? Because I have multiple data, but extracting means like, are we extracting only specific data, or like is there any
No.
condition?
When it comes to the data ingestion, it's just dump. We don't see what is there inside file, or we don't see what is there inside the table.
Okay, whatever the data is exists,
Yes.
same thing we are just dump into the ADF.
Yes.
Okay, through ADF we are just connecting into the ADLS Gen 2.
Yes.
Okay, from there we are extracting, right, Bhaskar? Like again, it is a dump or like?
No, it's not a dump. Here we are talking to the data. Here we are not talking to the data.
Okay.
We're just dumping it. Whatever is there, bring and keep it here.
Mhm. So from here we are applying any logic to in order to get the data, or like
Yes,
how?
we are going to apply the transformations here. Like if I wanted to clean the data, or if I wanted to aggregate it, or if I wanted to add the columns, or if I wanted to join the tables, all the things are going to be happen in the second phase.
Okay. And also we can also avoid duplication of the
Yes,
data also, right?
every transformation, all data cleansing operations and data transformations are going to be happen in the second phase.
Okay. So after that, so again we are whatever the, I mean, newly created data, that data will store into the ADLS Gen 2 also, right, Bhaskar?
Exactly.
Okay. Okay. Got it, Bhaskar. Yeah.
Yeah. So I just given the the definition here. Azure Data Factory is a cloud-based integration services which is used to extract data from various data sources and transform the data as per the business requirement. And we can also do orchestration between your source and target by using Azure Data Factory. So primarily, we are going to use Azure Data Factory for two operations. One is a data ingestion, another is a data orchestration. And for orchestration, if you are going to use ADF, 100% is you're going to do these two operations with ADF. On data transformations, we are going to use ADB or a Synapse. Okay, so if you know Databricks, then you can work with the Synapse. Because I'll tell you what do you mean by Synapse and why it is coming. We'll talk about it later. For time being, I just wanted to say Azure Data Factory is a cloud-based integration services where we can integrate other services like HD Insight for Hadoop. I can integrate Python or notebooks, Synapse, SSIS, all other services stuffs also can do integrate with the Azure Data Factory. So that is also having feasibility. In our case, we are going to say notebooks as part of our Databricks with ADF. I mean to say ADB is different. I mean Databricks is different. ADF is different, but still we can integrate them with the help of Azure Data Factory. So because of that reason, they're saying Azure is a cloud-based integration services. So services also can be integrated. Not only data, services also can be integrated. Now I'm going to show you how can we create this Azure Data Factory. In order to do this, in order to do all these practices, you required Azure Data Factory. If you don't have Azure Data Factory, you cannot extract it or you cannot load it. Okay, so at the time of working, all administrators are going to set all this stuff. We're just going to ask them, can you give me the access for Data Factory? Or can you give me the access for the source systems or target systems? So we are just always going to ask them to give a access. But in order to practice here by ourselves, then we need to set up all this setup by ourselves only. So because of that reason, I'm showing how we are going to create a ADF, how we are going to create a ADLS Gen 2. So like that, I'm just showing all the services, whatever the services we required for doing a data ingestion and data transformation, all those services that I'm going to show you how we are going to create it. Okay, so we already know about ADLS Gen 2, how we can create it, and SQL Server, how we can create it, we already seen. But again, I'm going to show you because from here, everyone has to do the practice. When I'm going to create a ADLS Gen 2, I'm not going to remove it. I'm going to keep it till our session is completed. If I'm going to create a SQL Server, if I wanted to create it, I'll create it. Or if I wanted to use the existed one, I'm going to use the existed SQL Server because this is the cost. If ADLS Gen 2 is fine, this is not going to be much more cost. I can keep multiple accounts also. But when it comes to the SQL, I'll show you how we can create it, but I may not use the same SQL Server. I may go for my permanent SQL Server. So I don't want to remove that. Okay. And Azure Data Factory, you can create it and you don't need to remove this. You can keep it because this is going to charge only when you run the pipeline. And this is not much chargeable. You can keep it. And this one also you can keep. And if you're not practicing for long time with the SQL, then you can remove this. Otherwise, you also can keep it. That is not going to be much more chargeable. So that is
Bhaskar,
yeah.
sorry, the removing means what exactly mean by SQL removing, Bhaskar?
No, service itself you can remove. Service removal. You don't charge, right?
Okay.
If you're not using the service, you can remove
Okay,
it.
okay. Only that. Okay, that is the one, right? Okay.
Yeah.
I thought of maybe is there any something which we need to remove it? No,
No,
right?
no,
Okay,
not like that.
okay.
Yeah, Bhaskar. So service remove in the sense we need to delete that.
Exactly. Delete the service.
Yeah. Thank you.
But the SQL Server is, why do we need, means here, I mean, from the Azure, anyhow, we are using this SQL Server, right? Locally installed. Only we need
Yeah,
that.
we are going to use, but still I wanted to show you even with Azure SQL some exercises so that
Oh,
you don't feel like, when you work, if they are going to use Azure SQL Server, so you will get confusion again why they are using. So because of that reason, I'm going to show you. And I already told you that particular SQL Server will be used for two purposes. One is for the business purpose also, and other is for metadata information.
yeah.
Okay. Please give me 1 minute. I'll be back. I'm sorry, I'm back. So let's see how we are going to set up this service. Azure Data Factory I wanted to set up. Then we'll talk about the building blocks or the components of the data factory. After creation of it, we'll see where exactly we can find all these building blocks. Whenever we are going to get the requirement, we are going to touch most of the building blocks, and few are reusable and few are going to be recreated. I mean, say we are going to newly create a few blocks. But all these building blocks are the components of the data factory is required for every pipeline. So let's see how we can set up first data factory. So creation of the data factory is very simple. Creation of ADF is very simple. Not even 1 minute is going to take to set up this. So that much faster it is going to do it. Let me show you how we are going to do it.
But
So
what do you mean by recreate the component? You told something.
Not recreate, newly creation.
New. Okay.
Reusable is there, and reusable means we are going to always use the existed block for multiple times. So which
Like
blocks will be used multiple times and which blocks need to create, we'll see that.
like a function. You mean.
For time being, yes.
Yeah. Okay.
So I wanted to create a Azure Data Factory. So just imagine this is the first session. From here, everyone has to do the practice. So today there will be less practice, but from tomorrow onwards, 80% is practical will be there. And rest of the 20% is we're going to talk to the context and we're going to implement it. Okay, so practice is very important. Now, once you come to the portal, if you wanted to access any service, then you have to use this portal.azure.com, and you need to have your account and subscription. and then we need to take the service. So I wanted to create a data factories. Just search for that. Anyhow, we are not going to work as administrators, but at least whatever the services that we require, if we know how we can create it, then we can do our practice. So I'm just going to take the data factories. I'm going to create a new data factory. Plus create.
Bhaskar, we need to parallelly create or we'll wait
No.
for.
Do not create parallelly.
Yeah.
Okay, so just follow with me how I'm doing, because you can do it later as you are having record. You can follow that. Okay, so today's session is fine, but tomorrow's session you have to do multiple times practice. Okay, so all the practice you're going to do after my session. If you do along with me, then I'll click somewhere and you will click somewhere. But project
Yeah.
is there, right? The project you are going to do along with me.
Okay.
Okay, so by the time you will be having complete navigations and you'll be having context of the tools, then you can easily do it. So otherwise it's difficult. Okay, so as I said, if you wanted to take any service, you require subscription, resource group, and service details. So these things we talked about it. Whenever you are going to take the service, these things are required. Now I'm going to create a new resource group here. I'm going to create a new resource group, Bhaskar-me-resource group. I'm just giving some naming standard here. Let's hit OK. All the services I'm going to keep in this particular place. Whatever the service that I'm going to create for your batch, it will be there under this particular resource group. Hit OK. And then data factory name. So data factory details I'm just going to provide. Bhaskar me ADF. So I'm just giving some name. It's available. And reason, from which region you wanted to take. I wanted to take from Central India because my storage also is in a Central India. So wherever you're having a storage, from there you can have it mostly. And then just directly go for review plus create. You can directly go for review plus create. So these details only is more and more enough. Let's review plus create. And hit on create. That's all. It just in seconds only it is created. Now, if you want to go inside the data factory, first you have to open the service. Go to resource. Now you can see your data factory here. Your data factory is from this particular location. Now I'm just going to open this. When I hit on data factory, so there is a data factory studio. So in order to do the development, we are going to use for development purpose, we are going to use Azure Data Factory Studio only. So development, everything, development, even QA or prod also, you're going to use the same thing. But generally, the development, pure development is going to be happen here. 100% here only it is going to be happen. We're going to move the code into this place and we're going to move the code into this place. So how we can move the code into the different environments, we'll see that. Okay, so we don't need to install anything. We can directly launch your Data Factory Studio. That means in the browser only you're going to do everything. You don't need to install anything here because Azure Data Factory is 100% cloud. It's a 100% cloud. Let's launch your Data Factory Studio. Now I can see you. And there is a one more approach also is there to open your Data Factory Studio. If you're not having access to the portal, you cannot navigate to this Data Factory Studio using the portal. So in that case, what you can do is you can use adf.azure.com. So this is a separate URL to access your Data Factory. Even if you access from the portal also, it comes into the same URL. You can use either one of them. So when you have a multiple data factories, you have to choose the appropriate data factories and then hit on continue. Then it goes to the same place only. So here also adf.azure and here also adf.azure. Okay, so data factory is isolated from the portal. I mean to say separate URL is there for that. For portal, we have a portal.azure. For ADF, we have a adf.azure. So that is what I mean to say here. Let's close this tab. Yeah. So there is a setup code repository. We'll talk about this. Very soon we are going to talk about it so that we can save the code. Okay. And as I said, by using Azure Data Factory, we can do the data ingestion and we can do the data orchestration and we can also do the data transformation. These three operations we do, but market is using this one and this one, not this one. Okay, so not even 5% of the projects are ready to use this transforming data with Data Factory. Okay, so there are many reasons are there. I'll talk about it when the time comes to transform the data. And then we can also run your SSIS packages directly with Azure Data Factory. So this one is not recommended. 99% of people never do that. Okay, so there are some situations, but it's not best practice if you run your SSIS packages with Azure Data Factory. So we are not going to say this in our course because if you wanted to do this, then first you need to know about the SSIS. Okay, so that kind of projects is very less chances. Not even 1%, I feel. And this is a home. We are there in the home. And this is a author, which is going to be used for 100% development. If you wanted to do the development, you are going to use this author. And this is monitor. Monitor to monitor the jobs. To monitor jobs. Like your SQL Server agent, if you are aware of SQL Server agent. And there is a manage. So manage is going to have a connections and integration runtimes. Okay, and triggers. You can also have a repository. So all those things will be there. That majorly we are going to concentrate with connections and IRs. Okay, generally we are going to have this. So this four buttons are we are going to touch. And this is a learning path. You can just ignore it. If you want, you can go through that. But this option, these buttons, we are going to have it. So we are going to spend the time each and everything. And since it is 100% development, we are going to spend 80 to 90% of the time with the author only. Let's see. Now this is the author, how it is, the look and feel you can see. This is the monitor. Your regular activity runs will be there here. And manage, you're going to have many things managing activities that we're having, connections, source controls, triggers, and so on. Okay, so let's come to the manage. Let's come to first here. I wanted to talk about the building blocks of data factory. When you get any requirement, first you need to understand, you have to break this logic to implement it, but how you're going to implement this logic. So if you wanted to implement your logic, first you need to understand what components we need to use. What are the different components I'm having to build my logic in data factory? Okay, so even if you're already having any ETL experience, that is fine. Even if you don't have, that is very, very fine, because you don't compare with your legacy ETL service. Okay, so whatever I say, that will go directly into your brain. But if you have any ETL experience, then you will start comparing. Even in the starting also, I used to compare. I always used to compare with SSIS. Okay, so since I was having experience with SSIS, I always used to compare. So when you start comparing, then it takes some time to understand. But if you don't compare, then definitely it will go smoothly. Because this is not same as your SSIS, or this is not very same as any ETL services. It is slightly different, you can feel, but the context, the way of implementation is different, but the requirement is common for all the ETL tools in the market. Okay, so in order to build, you required integration runtimes. What is this integration runtimes? We'll talk about it. This is very, very important. So 100% you're going to face an interview question from here. And then link services. Link services. What is link services? We'll talk about it. And data sets. Please keep in mind. Data sets. And what is the purpose of the data set that you're going to see? And we're also going to see activities. Your data factory is bundles of the activities. We'll see that. And data flows, why we need to go for data flows, why it is also building block, we'll see. A pipeline and trigger. So these are all the building blocks of your Azure Data Factory, are the main components to build any logic in the data factory. So let's talk about one by one. Azure integration runtimes. Okay, so Azure integration runtimes is going to provide a compute for you. If you wanted to process anything, you required processor. If you take a laptop, you will be having a processor, i4 or i7, something like this. You will be having processor. That is a compute to process the data. So compute means you're doing some calculations. So if you wanted to do some compute, then you required processor. That processor you're going to get with the help of integration runtime. With the help of integration runtime, you're going to get it. So it's something like a vehicle. It is something like a vehicle. So without vehicle, you cannot move from one place to other place. Without vehicle, you cannot move from one place to other place. Okay, so it's going to get the runtime which is required for your Azure Data Factory to move the data from one place to other place. Okay, so without integration runtime, you cannot run the pipeline. So pipeline means that is a data pipeline. You cannot run the data pipeline with Azure Data Factory without integration runtime. So 100% integration runtime is required. So what it is giving? It is giving a compute. So to move the data from a source to target. So how many different types of integration runtimes we are having? That is the interview question. How many types of integration runtimes we are having, and how we can differentiate them? This kind of questions you're going to face. I'm going to give the context and explanation. Whatever the direction the question is coming, you should be in a position to give the answer. So that you can give it if you understand the context. So I'm not going to give a question to answer. I'm going to give the explanation if you follow me, definitely you can give the answer, whatever the direction the question is coming. So there are three different types of integration runtimes. One is Azure integration runtime, self-hosted integration runtime, and SSIS integration runtime. So three different types of integration runtimes we are having it. Now, when you have a three, then how can you decide to use this Azure integration runtime or self-hosted integration runtime or SSIS IR? So to decide them to use any one of them or two of them or all of them, you should know about each and every individual. So if you know about this each and every individual, then you can decide your integration runtime based on requirement. So based on your requirement will give the answer to use which integration runtime is suitable for your requirement. Okay, so that is going to be possible only if you know each and every individual. Now just imagine I have a database in the SQL, I mean to say in the Azure, and I have a Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2. We talked about each and every individual, and we're also going to see practically again. So the SQL DBase is like a Azure SQL servers. I'm just keeping clearly here Azure data storages. Your database is a Azure database. Your file system is a Azure file system. That means Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2. If your data source is Azure storages, that may be Cosmos DB, that may be Document DB, that may be anything. If that data is stored in the Azure, then if you want to read the data from there, then definitely you required vehicle, you required runtime. So what runtime we required is, if your data storages are Azure data storages, then we are going to use Azure integration runtime. In order to read the data from Azure data storages, then we have to use Azure integration runtime. So that is what I'm saying. It is used to bring the data from Azure storages. Azure storages, we are having blob storage, Azure Data Lake Storage Gen 2, Azure SQL Server, Azure Data Warehouse, Cosmos DB, and so on. And we need to load the data into the target also. Your data factory, I told we are going to use for data ingestion or data transformation. Even if you go for data ingestion, target is required. If you go for data transformation, target is required. If this target is again Azure data storages, if the target is Azure data storages, then again to load the data into the Azure data storages, also we are going to use Azure integration runtime only. So simply, if your source is Azure data storages, we use Azure integration runtime. Or if your target is also Azure storages, there also we are going to use Azure integration runtime. So that is what I'm saying. And is used to load the data into the Azure storages. We are going to work as the Azure data engineers. When I say Azure data engineers, 100% you are going to use Azure data like Azure storages only as a target. Your source systems may be non-Azure systems, but 100% your target will be Azure storages. Okay, so when you use Azure storages, again we are going to use the same Azure integration runtime. So for reading, depends on the source. If your source is Azure storages, use Azure IR. If your target is Azure storages, use again Azure IR. So this Azure integration runtime comes with a data factory. It is the default integration runtime. It's a default integration runtime in the Azure data factory. Whenever you created your data factory, that time only it is going to come. It comes along with the data factory. It comes when you create a data factory. So by default, it is going to be there. So where you can find this integration runtime? Let's come to your Azure data factory. So when it comes to here manage, in the manage, you can see there is a integration runtimes. in the integration runtimes, you can find Azure integration runtime. So what type of integration runtime it is? Azure integration runtime, Azure IR. This is the name of the integration runtime. And this is of type Azure integration runtime. So that is what it is saying. The integration runtime is a compute infrastructure to provide the following data integration capabilities across different network environments. It is just going to give the infrastructure for you. And if you want to add the new integration runtimes, you can add it. So it is having only Azure IR only. If I need a self-hosted, then you have to add it. If I need SSIS IR, then you need to add it. They will not come automatically. You will get only Azure integration runtime by default. Okay, so we are not going to have a other integration runtimes. And let me come back to here. You're clear on this, right? Why we need to go for Azure integration runtime? Any question here?
Sir, one question.
please.
So in order to, just for the interview purpose, if someone will ask like what is Azure HR, if the source and destination both are in the Azure data storage, then we go with the Azure IR. Or like if the destination is Azure data storage, then we can go with the Azure HR.
Exactly. Basically, once I go for the second self-hosted, then you can understand 2 IRs is required. Here is 1 IR and here is 1 IR. Only thing is we are using the same IR.
Correct.
2 times you have to use it.
Okay.
Without IR, you cannot connect to the system.
Okay. Okay.
Bhaskar, is that the Azure IR using for only OLTP or OLAP?
No, we don't care about it. That is the OLTP or OLAP. We always
Okay.
think about is that Azure storage or not.
Right, Bhaskar. So,
Yeah.
So it is like a connection. Means I'm just as you mentioned, it went to the SSIS only where we create a like kind of source connection, target connection. So
Yeah.
it is same thing, right? Means
Yes. Yes.
okay, okay. And can you highlight if possible at the last how?
Yeah. I'll do
the
that. When I
SSIS?
show practically, I'll
Yeah.
show that. I'll highlight it.
It means it is like comparing to SSIS, you can highlight one liner.
Yeah. I'll do
Try
that.
to connect.
I'll do that.
Right. Not 100% fully,
Yeah.
but I know means I worked for like long back.
Yeah. Definitely, I'll do that.
Yeah, Bhaskar, one last question. So
Yeah.
in the source system, always should be like only 2 or like more row sources. So currently in the diagram, like we could see like SQL DB and the ADLS Gen 2. So maybe in the real time we can have like multiple ADLS or like only few things source.
That depends on the solution architects. It will be decided.
Okay.
Okay. So you may have a one account and multiple containers,
Mhm.
or you may have a different accounts also.
So we don't have any restriction like
No restrictions.
Okay. It's completely based upon the solution.
Architect. Yes.
Oh.
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. Thank you.
Okay. So let's go to the next integration runtime so that you can understand a little more. So self-hosted integration runtime is the next integration runtime. This is also very, very important. They will give the requirement. I have a so-and-so requirement and tell me how can you start designing your pipeline. Okay, so I'll give that context when we start the first exercise itself. We are going to see when the moment you hear that requirement, you can understand what kind of IR is required. Is that a Azure IR or self-hosted IR? Okay, so let's try to understand this. If your data source is non-Azure storages, okay, so if your data storages is non-Azure storages, then we can go with the self-hosted integration runtime or on-prem systems. If you have a data in on-prem systems, then we go with the self-hosted integration runtime. Or simply I'm saying non-Azure storages. There is
But
a
on the
typo.
diagram itself, it shows like ADLS Gen 2, it's Azure storage.
Oh my God.
So we can take it as files or something.
Yeah. Good. So you can just think about it as on-prem files. It's a typo. Okay, so this is a non-Azure storages. Two typos are there here. So this is a files and this is non-Azure storages. So if we have this kind of situation, then we are going to use the self-hosted integration runtime. Your database may be a SQL server, on-prem SQL server, or Oracle. Okay, so any databases, MySQL, then we have to go for self-hosted integration runtime.
And even file system also, right? Like CSV.
Even file system
Right.
also.
Yeah.
Okay, so if you have a SFTP, you have to go for self-hosted integration runtime. Okay, so mostly we don't take files from the local file system. We're always going to take it from the SFTP. Okay, so in that case, we require self-hosted IR only. So simply, if your data is non-Azure storages, then we go with the self-hosted integration runtime. 95% we are going to use self-hosted integration runtime. You cannot avoid self-hosted IR, or you cannot say I did not use self-hosted IR. 90% chances, 95%. So rest of the percentage we are going to use Azure IR. Of course, Azure IR will be there, but very starting, I mean to say, when you go for data ingestion, you have to go for non-Azure systems only. So in that case, you require self-hosted IR only. In my experience, I used Oracle and SQL Server and SFTP. These three platforms are used in my experience. So whenever you wanted to take the data from outside, then definitely you have to go for self-hosted IR only. And you're going to take the data from outside and you're keeping the data into the Azure. So to keep the data into the Azure, you require Azure integration runtime only. So now for extraction, one integration runtime, for loading, another integration runtime. You cannot use the same integration runtime for both extraction and loading. So when we can use the same integration runtime is if both are Azure storages. Your source and target is Azure storages. In that case, we can go for same Azure integration runtime. Otherwise, we are going to use the self-hosted IR and Azure IR. Mostly this approach is going to be there in the data ingestion only. Okay. Any doubt here? Okay, so I'm not going to show you at this point of time how we can set up it. When the time comes, when we talk about how we can read the data from on-prem systems, then we'll see how we are going to integrate or how we are going to set up our self-hosted integration runtime with the data factory. The third integration runtime is SSIS IR. SSIS integration runtime. I have a SSIS packages which is designed in on-prem systems. Okay, so if you wanted to migrate or if you wanted to migrate your existed solution towards to the Azure Data Factory, you just imagine I have 100 packages. This 100 packages transformed into 95 pipelines. We used to call them as a pipelines. Here it is a package and here it is a pipeline. This is a ADF and rest of the rest 5 are pending, right? So these 5 are taking longer time because of the business logic or many things. So due to the complexity, it is taking time. And you're targeted this 5 pipelines, maybe after 6 months, by 6 months, you wanted to make it available in the data factory. I mean to say you're planning to redesign by 6 months. So after 6 months, you wanted to make it with ADF only. Everything will be ADF. Then you can decommission it. But these 5 pipelines are stopping me to decommission my SSIS. Okay, so instead of waiting, instead of keeping 2 environments, this one and this one, what you can do is you can lift and shift these 5 pipelines. 5 packages are pending to design. These 5 packages you can lift and shift into the Azure Data Factory. So 95 pipelines and plus 5 packages you can have directly in the Azure, and then you can decommission and you can run your 5 packages from Data Factory and 95 pipelines from the Data Factory. So in that kind of situation, this may be helpful. So this SSIS IR will be used to run your SSIS packages as it is without doing any changes directly from the Azure Data Factory. So to run this SSIS packages, you required SSIS runtime. SSIS runtime is required. That's SSIS runtime you can get only with the SSIS IR. So that is what I'm saying. It is used to run SSIS packages as it is in the Azure Data Factory. If the business requirement demands to run SSIS packages as it is in the ADF, then we can lift and shift SSIS packages into ADF, and then we can run SSIS package from the Data Factory directly. But the cost is little more. Even do not try to do practice. So it's very dangerous.